Greetings, Mgtow! Today I want to talk about a university student called George Lawlor, a student at Warwick University in the UK who has recently received some backlash from the media and feminism because he challenged the hive mind. I understand that this has already been covered quite heavily, but I wanted to look at this from the perspective of a Mgtow. If you're not already familiar with what happened, George Lawlor was invited over Facebook to a consent class, and rather than just ignore it like most sensible people would do to avoid conflict, he decided to write an article titled, "Why I Don't Need Consent Lessons." When you think about it, it's a lot like all those women against feminism who hold up placards saying, "I don't need feminism because..." George himself is seen in his article holding up a sign saying, "This is not what a rapist looks like." Naturally, the response from the left-wing media was very accusatory and filled with shaming language. If you watched my last video, I think it's uncanny how many links you will see with some of these articles. Rebecca Reed, a writer for the Telegraph, wrote an article titled, "Breaking News! Rapists Can Be Nice University-Educated Boys." The narrative of the article is immediately present. Rebecca begins as such. "I'd like you all to take a moment to think about someone you've probably never met. His name is George Lawlor, and he's a student at Warwick University. And dear readers, something terrible has happened to George. You see, George logged onto Facebook recently and noticed that he had an invitation to an event. Perhaps Lawlor doesn't get asked to all that many parties. Such was his dismay that at this particular invite, instead of a request for his presence at the coolest club in town, he'd been invited to something entitled I Heart Consent, a workshop where people willingly turn up and learn about the idea of sexual consent." First off, why is it necessary to begin with describing George as someone you've probably never met? She's doing this in an attempt to diminish his influence by implying that nobody really knows who he is or what he does, and so therefore his argument isn't important. Secondly, the sarcasm. Quote, "And dear readers, something terrible has happened to George," end quote. She's using sarcasm to blow up George's reaction to try and make it look ridiculous. The ironic thing, of course, is that the media's reaction to his opinion is what is truly ridiculous here. One article that this guy wrote on a student website suddenly spawns articles across major newspapers across the UK. Thirdly, she says, perhaps Lawlor doesn't get asked to all that many parties. Why was this necessary information? Even if it's true, what possible bearing can that have on George's argument? This is unnecessary information, and it's designed to form a narrative and present George's opinion as invalid. This is what feminism and gynocentrism does when someone disagrees with it. When you read George's article, you can see that he's making a valid point. Why waste your time on teaching a consent class to university students when you could go out and help the victims of sexual assault? Or even better, go and do work in a country that has a rape culture. Sargon of Akkad pointed out in a video recently that rapists and murderers know they're doing something wrong. It probably has something to do with why when the police turn up, they don't tend to stick around. Can you picture this? The rapist just stands there when the cops show up and says, "Wait, this is actually against the law? Darn it! If only I had gone to those consent classes at Warwick University. Damn you, hindsight!" So, by this logic, we would expect the feminists to start teaching how not to murder classes, as well as why you shouldn't rob a bank classes. The reason feminists won't do this is because it's utterly stupid. George's argument is that these classes imply that he is automatically a potential rapist and needs to be prevented before he commits the inevitable crime. I think he has a valid point. Why should he need to go to a class to teach people not to do something that a very small number of people do, and when they do it, they know they shouldn't be doing it? Why focus on this issue when there are so many more common crimes that we do not get classes on? This kind of reaction is why people don't speak out more against the politically correct army. It's why the left-wing media gets to continually push its agenda again and again, because they think they can squash any dissenting opinions with a social media backlash. Thanks to sites like YouTube, we have media platforms that aren't controlled by the politically correct, and we can hear the opinions of the majority instead of the minority. As a Mgtow, please leave any thoughts you have on this topic in the comments, and also spare a moment to give some gesture to George. Comment on one of the articles or videos expressing your opinion. These people need to hear that people disagree with them. It really is the only way you can get it through their thick skulls. If you don't feel like commenting, you can always just like someone else's comment that you agree with. Just don't be silent. Let these bastards know that you don't agree with them. Let them know they are not the majority, no matter how much they want that to be the case. Various links relating to this are in the description below. Thanks for listening and have a great day.